My name is Evan Robertson. I'm the executive chef at Market here in Calgary, Alberta. Today I'm going to walk you through how to make a smoked Caprese salad and cook the perfect duck breast. Okay, to start the salad, we're going to use a rib of kale, but we got to clean it first. So you want to pull all of your kale leaves off of the rib itself. This gets stuck in your teeth and you don't want it. So we'll pull that apart. Very simple. And then we're gonna pull these into pieces and massage them in your fingers just to break the fibers down. It makes it easier to eat. This is how you make friends with salad. Yeah, so we'll get our kale in there, nice fork-sized chunks. We're ready to move on to our tomatoes. These little cherry tomatoes are beauties. Basically, the easiest way to do this is cut them in half. The tomatoes we use at Market come from Broxburn Farms in Lethbridge. Paul DeJohn is a good friend of mine, and I ask him to grow some nice things for me once in a while, but these little cherry tomatoes are beauties. Okay, we got our tomatoes ready. We'll get them in the bowl with our kale. Add a little bit of Maldon salt. It's a chef's secret, look it up. And we'll put that to the side and we'll smoke our bocconcini. So this step you might want to do outside on the barbecue or on your patio. We're gonna smoke our bocconcini. So we're gonna take applewood smoked chips and we're gonna light them on fire and blow them out. So we're cold smoking. Cold smoking, we don't want to add any extra heat. We don't want to melt our cheese or bocconcini. We just want to add that flavor of smoke to it. So again, applewood smoked chips. We're gonna light them up, blow them out, and then add our bocconcini, cover it, and let it sit outside for a while. Get your wood chips in there, pile them up, and your little propane blowtorch, and light them up. It might smell like a campfire in your kitchen for a bit, so I suggest doing this outside. A skillet would work for this. Tinfoil would work great, actually. You put tinfoil on any pan you don't mind getting dirty, then that's perfect. Now, I didn't get these wood chips wet. I didn't soak them because I want them to continue to burn. I don't want them to burn out. If we were continuously adding heat to them, then we would soak them so that they slow burn. But when you're cold smoking, you want to just use the chips dry so that you get as much smoke out of it as soon as possible. Once the tips of the wood chips are white, that's when we're done and we can put our bocconcini on top of it. Now that the wood chips are white on the edges, we're gonna add a little grate over top of it, put our bocconcini on, and cover it with tinfoil. We'll let it sit for 15 to 20 minutes. It's probably done after 10, but the longer you can leave it in there, the more smoke flavor is going to cover the bocconcini. We take extra virgin olive oil and basil stems after we pulled the leaves off of it, and we infuse it into the oil. We put in a sous vide, so a bubble bath basically at 80 degrees for about 60 minutes. It brings it up to temperature and extracts all the oils and flavors out of the basil stems and into the oil. So that's what I'm going to supply for you guys today. So we've added our olive oil and to our kale and tomato mix. Now we're going to place this right in the middle of the plate and stack it up. You want to try and get some height out of this. Gives you a 3D effect. You don't want it to be too clean, so don't put things in places with the salad. Let it kind of fall to where it goes. Take our smoked bocconcini and just drop it on top. Colors are gonna pop and make it elevate. And we're gonna take our balsamic reduction and just drizzle it over top. The last thing you want to do is season with salt. Maldon salt again. So first, to get the duck dish going, we're gonna get a pot of water boiling and blanch or par cook our fingerling potatoes. You wanna start with cold water when you're boiling potatoes so you don't cook the outsides before the insides. You want them all to warm up together. So next we're gonna butcher the duck. We've already taken it off of the duck itself, so it's just the duck breast. You wanna clean up any extra fat laying around the meat itself. It will come to you already like that. but I will let you guys butcher the duck or score the duck yourselves. By scoring the duck, you're allowing the fat to open up and be able to render the fat out. You want to be able to crisp the skin up. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna hash mark it and score it. So we're gonna score the duck breast. Scoring it, you don't wanna go all the way through the fat to the meat. You just wanna go about 3/4 of the way through the fat. So we'll start on an angle, nice even strokes through it. A sharp knife helps with this. If you get one way, you're gonna go the other. This not only helps get the fat out of the fat to make it crispy, it also helps making plating look nice. Once your duck breast is nicely scored, you're gonna wanna put it skin side down on a paper towel to dry the fat out. So next we're gonna make our gastrique for the duck dish. Basically the ingredients we need for this are Saskatoon berries, some shallots, some butter, cognac, and some apple cider vinegar, and we're gonna sweeten it up with some sugar. So we're gonna start by sauteing our shallots down with the butter, and we'll just sweat our shallots out on the stove. So you don't wanna add color to it, you just want them to become translucent. So a nice low to medium heat is gonna help with that. And now that the shallots have sweated down, we're gonna add our Saskatoon berries, our cognac. We're gonna add our apple cider vinegar because that's gonna go nice with the duck breast, and then our sugar. And we're gonna put that on a low to medium heat and just let it cook down. We're gonna make the vegetables for this dish, which is vegetable linguine. We're gonna spiralize some carrots, onions, and zucchini. First, we want to peel our carrot. Nice long strokes. So keep what pieces of the carrot that you're not going to use and throw them in a stock for later. Make soups or something. So we'll throw our carrots in a bowl. So if you have a spiralizer at home and you're going to do this, a really good tip for you is to the feet that come with it, just drop the back feet off your countertop so that it hooks onto your counter, so that when you're pushing force onto it, it doesn't move on you and you won't cut yourself or fight with the machine. Next, we're gonna do our zucchini. So we're gonna cut the ends off the zucchini and then cut it in half. We'll put the zucchini in the bowl with the carrots. Next, we're gonna spiralize our onion, but we're gonna peel it first. Make sure your first cut is straight down the onion so that you have a flat surface to work with. So now the onion's done, we'll throw it in the bowl as well. Next, for the vegetable linguine, we're gonna cut up some garlic. Before we cut up the garlic, we're gonna cut the bottom off of the garlic, that brown spot. But yeah, you're just gonna roughly chop up this garlic and we'll add it into our vegetables as well. Seasoning your table with salt is going to do two things for you. It's going to help season your garlic, and it's going to help keep the garlic on the table and not moving around on you, which is going to help you puree it up while you're chopping it. Make sure to keep your fingers out of the way while you're chopping. Now that our garlic's nicely chopped, let's add it to our bowl with our vegetables. The next step here is to take fresh oregano, pull it off the stems, and chop it up into our vegetables as well. Take the oregano by the stem, hold it near the top, and you can pull backwards and all the oregano will fall off of it. Use these stems in your stalks. So we'll chop this oregano up now that we've taken it off the stems, and we'll throw it in our bowl. I always like to use fresh herbs over dry herbs. It's a more refined and elegant flavor. The vegetable linguine is gonna come to you already pre-done, but at this point now we're just gonna mix it up in the bowl and disperse all of our ingredients. Make sure that we're not getting huge chunks of carrots or huge chunks of zucchini and onion. Now that we're at this point, we'll portion it into 2 portions for you. So our fingerling potatoes are done. They took about 17 minutes from cold water. Once they got to a boil, I turned it down to a heavy simmer, but not a solid boil. Now we're gonna pull them out of the water. These are hot potatoes, but we're not gonna play hot potato with it. But we're gonna put them in an ice bath to cool them down immediately. We want to stop that cooking process. So contrary to everything that you've been taught, we're going to start cooking the duck in a cold pan. I'm going to use a skillet. You could use any pan you have at home. It will work. Try and avoid non-stick Teflon coated pans. I like to use the skillet because it's heavy, it's got a nice bottom, it's gonna hold the heat very well and help us render the fat out of the duck and crisp that skin up. We're gonna put the duck in skin side down, and then we're gonna bring it to the heat and slowly raise that temperature to slowly bring the fat out of the duck. We season the duck while it's in the pan. And this is gonna be a slow and low process, but the product is gonna be much more elevated. So our fingerlings have completely cooled off, and now we're gonna cut them in half before we put them in the duck fat in the pan. I'm gonna slice them lengthwise, just for aesthetic purposes when we're plating. Every step you make in the kitchen, you wanna think about the end result. There's two sides to the duck. There's a thin side, the tail end, and then there's a fatter side. If you see the tail end coming up, you're gonna wanna just use your tongs or your fingers, if you're okay with that, to push down on it to evenly sear that duck. So now that our our Saskatoon berry gastrique is cooked down, we're gonna blend it. We're gonna blend it in a Vitamix in the restaurant. Any blender you have at home, including a Magic Bullet, will work here. And if you don't have a blender, you can just use it as is. The berries are now tart and sweet. So you can plate it that way, but we're gonna puree it up just for the aesthetics of plating at the end. Like I was saying earlier, you wanna think of the end result of everything you're doing in the kitchen. So now that you've got it pureed up, you can do one of two things. If you have a small squeeze ball at home, you can put it in there for plating reasons later, or let's just put it in a small bowl and have a spoon ready for plating later. So with the duck breast, you're gonna wanna make sure that when you're cooking it, it's at a nice slow sizzle like the bacon, like when you're cooking bacon. You don't want it spitting fat all over the place. You're gonna cook it too fast, too quick, and it won't render that fat out, giving it a nice crispy feel at the end. You also wanna cook it from the skin side on the bottom, the majority of the way through your cooking process, 75% of it. When we pull the duck out of the oven, that's when we're gonna flip it over and just let that top side just finish cooking it slightly. That way you get a nice even cook in the middle of your duck breast. So next we're gonna saute our vegetable linguine. So we're gonna need a pan and some butter, and we're gonna warm our pan up opposite to our duck breast, starting with a cold pan. We're gonna warm our pan up, melt our butter, and then go straight into sauteing our vegetables. So now that our butter's melted and starting to sizzle a bit, we're gonna add our vegetables to the pan. Disperse them around there. And we're gonna saute this until the onions become translucent. Make sure to season every step of the way. Salt and pepper. So we pulled our duck out of the oven. We're just gonna flip it over and let it rest for 2 to 3 minutes. Make sure to keep the fat in your pan because we're gonna use it later to brown our fingerling potatoes. You're gonna wanna be conscious of every step you're making while you're cooking. As we finish cooking our vegetable linguine, we're gonna split it into 2 spots in the pan. That way when you're plating your dish later, you're not fighting with the vegetables flopping all over the place, making your plate dirty. So we've saved our duck fat in the pan when we cooked our duck breast, and all that fat is rendered out. We're now gonna heat that pan up and add our fingerling potatoes flesh side down to brown them for our dish. Once your potatoes are in there, make sure to season with your salt and your pepper. To see the edges start browning, we're gonna pull this off the heat and dry it out on a paper towel to get rid of some of that duck fat. This might be a step that you can skip at home, but here at the restaurant, we don't want to do that because, again, we're going to think about the plating of this dish at the end. And if we have all this duck fat dripping off onto the plate, it's going to ruin our finished product. Okay, we're almost ready to plate this dish. We're just going to slice up our duck first. I do want to mention that we rested our duck with the fat side up so it stays crispy while it's resting. If we were to rest it fat side down, it's going to retain moisture again and not be as crispy as a finished product as we want. But this step, we're gonna flip it over and we're gonna cut it from the flesh side down through the fat. Make some very nice thin slices. The reason we're slicing it thin and we're slicing against the grain so it's a better mouthfeel, better texture when you're eating the dish. Once you've got it sliced, we're gonna flip it back over so it's skin side up so it doesn't soften up like we've talked about. I'll do the next one. Now that we've got it sliced up and our protein is exposed, we're gonna give it a little bit of seasoning. Now we're gonna go to the plate. We're gonna get our sauce down first and make some nice oval lines on that plate. And then we're gonna put down our vegetable linguine. Just about 11 o'clock on the plate, off center. The reason we're starting our plate this way is so that the sauce is drawing your eye around the plate and the vegetable is not in the middle, making it a gravitational pull, so you're not just looking at a pinwheel spin. It's kind of stopping your eye there. Now we're gonna take our beautiful fingerling potatoes and lay them out. And we're gonna fan out our duck breasts. So you can see all the hard work you've done in there. And season with Maldon salt. Following these exact steps is what I expect out of my kitchen staff in the restaurant, and I encourage you to follow these exact steps at home as well.